Down trees, power outages, a possibility with this high pressure fan continuing to build in. There's a big pressure difference from that high pressure fan and also Dora low pressure system that you can see to the south of us. With that hurricane, it's still a major category 4, and you see the winds at the center 130. Now it's going to make its closest approach to the island, and then that area of high pressure, they're going to both work together to funnel in very strong winds across the entire island chain, and that's going to last within the next 36 hours. So a windy batch coming our way. In fact, we have a red flag warning. High wind warnings are up for all of the islands. Dry brush, also low relative humidity and very gusty conditions. Gusts up to even 50 miles per hour coming our way tomorrow.
Oh, this is live right across the street from my house. Freaking power line just went down. Tried my little water hose, but well. Yeah, it's going. I don't know. Hopefully they get him out. So now they're trying to warn the guy to have him get out of his house. Oh. Flames going on the other side. Police trying to get in. Round 2, and we just got our power back on. See them right there. That's the power line that started from up the road there, and all of that is still burning. Okay, fire truck still never come yet.
Place to just be sitting here, but I also can't just get out of the car with all these trees and power lines above us. Man, this whole section up here is concerning to me.
Hello my friends, I'm Nathan Liao. The website is watchmanscry.com. Today I am going to do a difficult task because once again, great deception has entered the fray. It's confusing the brethren. A lot of folks are stumped. They don't know what to make of it. But at the same time, they're being bombarded with falsehoods and fake information. And this happens to be about the Maui fire, the fire in Lahaina. I'm going to explain why I do not believe that it is the directed energy weapons to kill everybody, and it's pretty much gone mainstream. However, in order for it to be true, we have to bypass common sense, we have to bypass logic, we need to also slander some of the people because there needs to be some bad guys. So the enemies and the villains have been chosen. There's a lot to this theory. Now, before I get started, I want to establish who this message is for. This message is for Christians. If you are a Bible-believing Christian, if you consider yourself saved and you know what time it is, you understand what's going on, then this message is for you. So let's establish that right up front. I'm talking to Christians. When this thing first happened, it didn't take very long. It was within a day or two that the theory started popping up. And I noticed that within 24 hours, it seemed like the theory went everywhere. It was all over the airwaves. It's all over social media. It's on Facebook. Everybody is sharing the same bullet points. Now, folks, for those of you out there that are sleuths, when you study the New World Order, a lot of you are very good at those types of things. So I want to appeal to that thing inside of you that wants to discover, that wants to know, and seeks the truth. I want to appeal to that part of you because there's a weird thing going on in the air. Right now, where we are at the end of the summer, 2023, there is a very weird thing taking place all over the whole world. We are no longer in normal days. We all know this. Non-Christians know this. People in the world know this. People who are into the New Age, all the flavors that are out there, they're all talking about how the world is different, how the world has changed. They've gone even further. They're talking about how there's a different atmosphere, there's a different feeling in the air. It feels like nothing's real. It feels like the reality that we used to enjoy before COVID is gone. And by the way, that's the marker that a lot of people are using. They're saying since COVID, nothing is the same anymore. It seems like we're in a surreal dream.
Okay, TikTok, I have a scary situation I need help with. I hope you guys watch the video all the way through so that you can maybe try to help me through this, because I guarantee you I'm not the only one dealing with this situation. Okay, so we all know how 2020 through 2022 was, right? We were all in our houses and just pretty much on pause. Ever since we were allowed to come back out into the outside, it has felt off. Okay? Everything has felt off. It feels like a dream. It feels like nothing's real, like we're reliving the same day over and over, or we're like in a twilight zone. Like, it even feels like time isn't real. And now it literally feels like summer didn't even happen, but for like a couple of weeks, and now it feels like it would feel in like September or October, early October. So did we skip summer? Did we just entirely skip summer? Like, what is going on? Days either go really, really fast or really, really slow. I always feel like I'm on the verge of like something big is fixing to happen, and we're like right there on the cusp of it. But do you guys feel this? Have you guys been noticing these things?
And of course, as Christians, we know why that is. That's because we're in the end times and we have turned the corner into the events of the final book of Revelation in the Bible. We turned the corner and we are now in new territory. You can feel it. It's weird. There's a weird fog in the air. So while this thing's in the air and you're trying to navigate to please God, you want to hear well done. I know that the majority of you have that intent. You want that. You don't want to disappoint Jesus. You don't want to be embarrassed on the day of judgment. So I get it. A lot of you are studying so you're not caught off guard. But here's the thing that is also a part of this atmosphere. And that is, with this weird fog that we're all feeling and the surreal that we can't really describe, but we can feel it. With all of that, we also have to include the powers of darkness are in that mix. And that's part of what we're feeling. It's the powers of darkness have been unleashed because the enemy knows his time is short, and the Bible tells us this. He will be allowed to go forth and make war with the saints. Revelation 13 says that. He was given authority to make war and overcome them, the saints. A lot of the saints, a lot of the people who love Jesus and want to please him are going to stumble. They're going to fall. They're going to fail. Why? Because the enemy is out there. The devil is out there, and that's what he does. He has a way of waving his hand in the air, and then the people can't see the truth. He has a way of doing that because he's the father of deception and lies. That's what he does. And in these last days, Satan is going to use his minions, the principalities, the demons, the fallen angels, all the wicked spirits in high places and in low places will be allowed to take part in this operation of the end. And the final goal of him, because his time is short, is to get God's people to stumble or to fall or to perish or to be destroyed. So the enemy wants that. So when this thing came forth, this directed energy weapon conspiracy rose up, and I saw the images. That's what got my attention. I saw some of those images that people are sharing, and there's 3 or 4 of them. But when I saw them, my first reaction was to do a search on the images. And when I did, I found out that every one of them were being misused. They were being misappropriated. They were images of other things that were not from Hawaii. And I found the source. Like, for example, this one in front of your screen right now, this one, that is a rocket taking off. It's the Falcon X launch by Elon Musk. That's what that is, folks. But Christians took that image. Some of you took this image and you've been sharing it and saying that this was proof that Hawaii got attacked. But this image has been misused. But a lot of you have been using it and spreading it and saying, look, here it is. Here's the proof. And, you know, folks, I thought we were better than this. I thought that we had already learned our lesson. So when I saw these images and I did a quick look and I found out that they weren't true, I immediately started looking in scripture, and then I started looking into other things. The Holy Spirit then started downloading things to me, and He helped me. He navigated me. I began to examine and cross-reference that theory against something else that's going on. Now, folks, again, I'm talking to Christians, so I am hoping that you're hearing me from the standpoint of the brethren. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your friend. I'm not against you. So, as I went into a deep dive, the Holy Ghost showed me what is really going on. That theory leads to a certain location. It leads to a goalpost. That theory has an end game. I'm going to share the end game in a moment, but so far, this thing has so much genius in it that it's able to unite everybody against who? The villain. There needs to be a villain, so who is it? Well, it's FEMA, it's the New World Order, it's the billionaires, it's Oprah, it's that emergency management guy that didn't turn on the sirens. He's an enemy. And the cops are now enemies because part of the narrative is that they didn't let anybody escape so that the people could burn and die. Another enemy is the teachers who sent all the kids home so that they could die, because on the day of the fires, the kids just went home from school and they all died. So the teachers are enemies now. By the way, that's not true. There was no school that day.
I hope you'll stay and listen to this video. It's about the Lahaina schools and the misinformation that's being spread. I wasn't going to say anything because I didn't want to bring my professional life onto my TikTok platform, but I'm going to at this point because this is really beyond ridiculous. I have seen several TikToks talking about how Lahaina schools sent their children home and didn't notify the parents and just sent them home during the fires. That is absolutely not true. Please stop spreading that disgusting lie. We had school on Tuesday for staff only. It was canceled due to high winds and no power. Students were not supposed to be in school until Wednesday. So thankfully they were not in school on Tuesday. But this narrative that you guys are pushing is not helpful to anyone. All these lies and conspiracy theories and anger and just absolute ridiculous nonsense that you're pushing for clout and views is disgusting to those of us who are directly involved in this. We're hurting. People have lost everything. We're still waiting to hear if our students are okay. I don't know if any of my students have perished. I'm waiting daily to make sure people are okay and staff members are okay. And you guys are out here saying that we sent kids home in the middle of a fire alone and didn't notify their parents. I just can't even with you people anymore. Yes, there were some kids that were home alone because their parents work, just like any other situation across the nation. That's just a devastating fact. And we're all hoping and praying that those kids had help and got out of there. I'm just begging you guys to have some compassion and stop with the lies and the freaking conspiracy theories. It wasn't some laser. Do you really think doing stuff like this is helpful to anyone involved? Ask yourself that. Would you like people starting conspiracy theories if your family was involved, if your friends, your loved ones, your colleagues were involved? Would you appreciate conspiracy theories? No. So please, knock it off.
Now, I have been trying to bring sense into this narrative on my Facebook page, on my Facebook wall. Those of you who read my Facebook page, I have posted several things that are debunking what you've heard. And the reason I'm debunking what you've heard is because they can be debunked. All of them. Every single point that you've been told is nefarious can be debunked. It doesn't even take a deep dive. It just takes a few minutes to debunk each and every point.
And anything like this on my page is going to be deleted, but I'm going to go ahead and say it one more time. It was not DEW. It's not some deep state, not fire bombs. It happened across the island because we had a red flag warning. It happens every year. We've had major fires on the island. It has just never struck like this in the town itself. The firefighters were upcountry fighting another fire. They couldn't get down there in time to do any type of warning or saving. Because of the way the fires hit, our communications were all knocked down, so nobody got any warning. It's just devastation. It's not a conspiracy.
Been around some fires, but not like this. This has been incredible, unbelievable. When I seen it, it jumped over in the corner of Dickinson Street. I saw the flames jump over, so I had quite the experience trying to get out of here on my Harley. There was embers all over, and the back of my neck was starting to burn. And the winds were probably 70 plus miles an hour where I was at. So it was unbelievable. Never seen anything like it.
You know, I hate that I have to make this video about the fires in Maui, but the truth is you need to know what's going on and what's not going on. So here's the deal. There is a ton of social media videos out there right now. It's just spouting conspiracy theories. Everything from there was a laser coming down from the sky, lighting everything on fire, to the most probably popular one is that the government started the fire so they could take land from the Hawaiians. All right, so that is completely not going to happen and completely not true. And I know I'm going to piss off some people by saying that, but there's zero chance that happens. First of all, you don't know the Hawaiians. Like they would not let that happen. They would never let that happen. They still feel the pain of what happened, almost 100 years ago. Like they still feel that. They would not let that happen again, right? They would rise up. Number two, there's not a lack of land here. There's land everywhere. Maybe 0.1% of Maui has like stuff on it. So there's not a lack of land. So the government would not burn down property and kill people just so they could have land. Like there's just such an abundance of it. What they have is a lack of desire to develop. And that's a whole different issue. If they wanted to develop, they wouldn't need to burn down a town to develop and take land. They would just go and build. They have lots of land. They have lots of areas to build cities. So the whole there's a 15-minute city or they're trying to destroy everybody or that's just ridiculous. You're not helping. You're not helping. If you want to help with the situation, stop spouting conspiracy theories. Know that, yes, was there mistakes made? Of course. Were firemen called off one thing to another? Yes. People make the best decision they can with the information they have. And looking back, hindsight's 2020. But there is no deliberate action here to hurt people. And now people are like, oh, he's part of the man. I don't know.
And the thing that I don't understand is those of you who are sleuths, you like to study. I'm surprised that a lot of you are just repeating what you heard on Freedom Radio. Why are you doing that? If you want to debunk something, you leave the players to the side, and then what we do is we go and find out for ourselves. We examine for ourselves in different places. And it's not hard, folks. Every one of you are smart enough to do this. Because if you're old enough to drive a car, and if you're smart enough to have a driver's license, you're smart enough to Google things, to do a search for things. So when we're done with this program, please do that. Please do a search for some of the things that I'm going to share. Now, back to what the Holy Spirit was telling me. The Holy Spirit let me know that this thing is not real. It's not true. And the number one reason that he told me that was because God reminded me of what time it is. And then he led me to Revelation. I went and read a certain passage in Revelation, and I want to share it with you guys. So if you're taking notes, you can just write this down, or if you're driving, just remember where it is and you can look it up yourself. But it's found in Revelation chapter 7. So I'm getting my Bible here, Revelation 7. Now, as a background to this, in Revelation 6, the seals are starting to be broken. He's breaking the seals, and there's an event in heaven. John the Apostle is up in heaven, or he's having a vision in heaven, and he's watching all these things take place. So he sees an angel hand a scroll to Jesus. Jesus takes a scroll. It's a scroll that you roll up. Like in the old days, they would roll it and then put the dab of wax, and the king would smudge his ring into it, the signet ring. So that's what Jesus has in his hand. It's a rolled up scroll, and it's sealed shut with 7 wax seals that have dried on it. So he starts to break them, and that's what we see happening. And when he pops one off, then things happen on earth. So the first one is the white horse, and the second one is the red horse, and then the famine, and then the pale horse. Those are the first 4 seals. And then we have the fifth seal, which is a summary of all the martyrs that have died since man has been on the earth. All of those martyrs are under the altar. And there is a deep, very deep, intense study that I plan to do about all of this, because it has to do with the blood that is shed in evil. All of the sin that caused blood to be shed, all of the blood that was shed by murder, by sin, by war, by death, all of the blood that was shed gets absorbed into the earth. It goes into the earth, folks. The earth swallows it up, and then the blood then cries out from the ground. That is something I'm going to talk about in the future, but if we could understand what that actually means, it goes very, very deep, ladies and gentlemen. But part of the blood being spilled is the martyrs, the blood of the martyrs. They were ripped apart by lions. They were burned at the stake. They were killed in war. They were killed in mistreatment all through time. There have been martyrs who died for God. And those martyrs are under the altar, and they're still saying, how long, how long? And God says, until the other ones join you. Which means that there's a number of martyrs that signify when the end of time will come. So that's the fifth seal, to let us know that God has not forgotten those who have suffered and those who are still wanting justice. Because justice is God's, vengeance is the Lord's. So that's the fifth seal. And then we have the sixth seal. And the sixth seal is a summary of everything that's going to take place on the inside of the scroll. So the sixth seal is like a table of contents that when it gets popped off, it's letting everybody know that inside the scroll is some very, very bad things. A horror is inside the scroll that is going to result in the return of Jesus. He's coming back to earth. So the outside of the seals, it's like the summary, the executive summary. It's letting everyone know that the end game of that scroll is Jesus coming back. But when he does, he's going to totally cleanse the earth. He's going to burn the earth. He's going to judge the earth, and he's going to make things right. So that's seal number 6. And then when the seventh seal got popped, then the scroll opened. So when the seventh seal opens, we get to chapter 7. And look what it says in verse 1. After these things I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, on the sea, or any tree, until those who were supposed to be sealed got sealed. And that's when we see the sealing of the 144,000. But the thing I want to zero in on is what verse 1 says. It says, there were 4 angels at each corner of the earth, and they were holding back the wind during this salvation event. What that tells us is that there are angels who control the wind. Angels control the wind, ladies and gentlemen. They're able to do that. So the Bible's letting us know that angels control wind. As we read further in Revelation, we see there's angels doing things on the sun. They're hurling things down onto earth. There's a lot of incredible things taking place. So in verse 1, it talks about the wind. Now, if we go forward to chapter 8, because up to this point, the trumpets have not been blown yet. So if we go to the next chapter, in chapter 8, then the 7th seal is open. And look what it says. When he opened the 7th seal, that's 8 verse 1, Revelation 8:1. When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. You guys know this. You've heard this many times. But I want to point something else out that possibly you haven't thought about. It says, then another angel having a golden censer came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints, and the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took a censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it on the earth. Now let me stop there. What do we have going on in heaven? There's 7 angels are given 7 trumpets. So before they start blowing the first trumpet, something else happens. There's an 8th angel. And this part right here, ladies and gentlemen, is the part that I want to zero in on. The 8th angel goes to an altar, and the altar is burning. It has incense that is burning. The passage tells us that that incense that is burning consists of our prayers. Now, folks, think about that. Not just our prayers, but every prayer that the people of God have lifted up to heaven since the beginning of time. All of the prayers are in that. The prayers get stored in heaven. That means that the people who were mistreated 50 years ago, and the people who were being brutally murdered 100 years ago, and the ones who were in the lion's den 2,000 years ago, the ones who were about to be ripped apart in the Roman Colosseum, all of their prayers went up to heaven, and God has their prayers stored in the incense altar. The prayers are stored. You know what that means, folks? That means that God remembers the injustice that has happened on earth. He remembers. Of course, some people might say, well, how is that fair to them if they're stored up there and they're not answered? Well, we don't know if they were answered, folks. We don't know. Because the Bible says the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. God doesn't forget the prayers, folks. He remembers the ones who are guilty, the ones who are responsible. And those prayers are the record keeper. They're the diary of the injustice that has happened down here. And God's remembering it, folks. So at the very end of time, during the tribulation, one of the things that God's going to do to make things right and to set things right is to isolate each one of those prayers. And depending on where they took place on earth, because they all come from different parts of the earth absorbed their blood. And that blood has tainted the ground, and it was a sacrifice that the enemy loved. Innocent people dying. Satan loved that. By the way, I don't want to deviate too much right now, folks, but there are parts of the earth that are contaminated with so much sin and sacrifice to Satan. There are places of the earth that are poisoned, spiritually poisoned. So at the end of time, when Jesus says he's going to cleanse the earth, this is part of what he's doing. So that's what's happening in the background. An angel takes the prayers of the saints and he puts it in the censer that's in his hand. It's an incense holder, a lamp, if you will. And he's holding on to it. And then he walks over to the throne of God. And God has an altar too that has fire. And the angel dips his hand into that fire and adds it to the prayers of the saints. So now the angel is holding a ball of fire mixed with the prayers of the saints, the memories. And what does the angel do with that ball of fire, ladies and gentlemen? He throws it down to the earth. And then what happened? Verse 5, the end of verse 5 says, the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth. And there were noises on the earth, thundering, lightning, and an earthquake, while that fire starts to burn on earth. None of the trumpets have been blown yet. This event right here is an isolated event. The angel throws it down onto the earth, and I submit to you, the prayers of the saints were accompanied by fire, and wherever those prayers originated from, whether they were in South America or New York City or Vegas or Africa or Europe, wherever they originated from, where they started, fire lands in those locations. So in other words, judgment happens to different parts of the earth as part of the tribulation cleansing. And God has to do this because Satan has taken areas of the earth and poisoned them and turned them into his areas where his seed is. For example, Pergamos is his seed. Imagine that, folks, where Pergamos is. Do you think that ground is saturated with bad slime, bad juju, bad evil? Of course it is. And we can go to a lot of areas of the earth and see that the earth is poisoned with bad juju. Activity that they did back then. Sacrifices and altars to Satan. And there are places all around the earth that are contaminated. So before Jesus comes back and sets up his kingdom, he must first take his broom, that's actually a wire brush, and blow torch the evil away with fire. With fire, folks. So in the end of time, according to this, there's going to be fire on the earth. And angels will also control the wind. Now, I want to show you guys something. If you go to Weather Underground, you guys can do this yourself. If you go to Weather Underground and you look at the maps, there's an option to look at maps, and it says other maps. And if you click on that, it'll bring up this image right here. There are choices where you can click on to just tell it to show fire, active fires. So I did that. And look at this image, folks. This first one you're looking at are the fires on the left side. That's South America. That's happening right now. Look at Africa. Look at all those fires. This is happening in real time right now. These areas are burning right now. Let's look at the United States now. Look at this, folks. There's fires all over North America. Canada is experiencing the worst fire season in their history because they're approaching 20 million acres. All through Canada, we have it in Alaska, and of course, we have it in Hawaii. When we look at Australia, it's everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. All over Europe. What do we have here? We have the entire world burning right now. So the thing that a lot of folks are not taking into account, and maybe some of you have not taken into account, is that there's not only the fires from Hawaii and in Washington, the Medical Lake fire. They're even saying that the one in Spokane, here where I live, was done by a directed energy weapon. But what about all this, folks? Were all of these started by DUs, directed energy weapons? Do you think so? You see, folks, we're in the end times. and the fires are fulfilling Bible prophecy. And those fires that are occurring, we just read what causes the fires. The angel throws fire down. And I choose to believe that it's a sign of the end times. I choose to respect the source and acknowledge the source. And the source right now, folks, is God, because we're in the end times. Now, I understand some people might argue and say, well, how do we know these are end time fires, Nathan? How do we know that they're just not a peak year or a year when it's just a little bit hotter than in the past? That is a fair question. So I want to include that in the consideration. However, Jesus said to the Pharisees, you can discern what the weather's going to be, but you cannot discern the signs of the times. And he said that word plural, the signs, meaning that there was more than one sign that was available to the Pharisees back then that they were not able to see. So for those of us who are alive right now in these end times, our job is to be vigilant. And when we see events taking place in the climate or in the world, in the weather, in the sun, moon, stars, because Jesus said there would be sign in the sky. When we see those things, we're supposed to look up, because he said that means his coming is closer. Our redemption is getting closer. It's drawing near. So I want to revisit that passage we just looked at in Revelation 8, when it says that the angel took the fire and threw it down on the earth. There's another thing that is mentioned. Verse 5. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth. So we can see that fire will be thrown to the earth, and that means that there's going to be fires on the earth in different parts of the earth, which is what we can see with this map. So now if we're asking the question, well, are these fires all around the earth normal, or are they a sign? That's for the determination of discernment. But since we do have fire, and since it's prophesied here in Revelation 8:5, there's also something that's mentioned. If we are investigating this and we're studying the Bible, if we're trying to make sense of it, then we have to consider everything. So fire is one of the things that's thrown to earth, but there's another thing mentioned. It says, and there were noises, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. So according to this prophecy, when the fire starts up on the earth, we can expect lightning and thundering and some crazy storms to accompany it. Of course, someone could argue that, well, we've always had lightning, we've always had thunder, we've always had that, Nathan. So how do we know which lightning and thunder is a sign of the end times, or is it just regular weather? That's a good question. However, we also need to look at the proximity that all of the signs are taking place. Are they all happening at the same time or within a matter of days to one another? Well, I want to bring something else to your attention. That very hot center of air that's in the middle of the United States, and it's wreaking havoc. The elderly, they often succumb to heat waves like this. And so we're going to hear the stories about it if we're not already. But in addition, this heat dome has done something else. It brought in some very, very, very weird storms. In fact, they are so weird that it was scaring people. And people filmed it, they videotaped it, and here it is on the screen. Now look at this. This is a storm that just happened over Lake Michigan, and the people talking about it said they have never ever seen anything like this. There are people reporting who are sailors, and they have sailed around Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes, and they're reporting that they have never in their life seen a storm like this. But this lightning lasted for a long time. I've heard some reports that it was 30 minutes long, and then it moved. It went from the Great Lakes and started to move southeast, and so there was a great light show. This is not normal. This lightning was exploding for 30 minutes straight, and it didn't stop. This is incredible. Look at the screen, folks. Look at the images right here.
This is not time-lapse. This is not sped up. This is the actual freaking lightning going on right now. This is insane. I have never, ever seen lightning like this.
So we have fire all around the world, and now we have this lightning happening in a manner that we have never observed. I've never seen something like this in my life. Have you? If we are end time students and we are studying the prophecies and we want to be awake and aware and vigilant, then we have to place these things on the table. So now we have lightning and fire. What's missing? The passage said, the prophecy said, it was lightning and thunderings and fire and an earthquake. So let me just throw that out. If there is a big earthquake in the next few days or weeks, if we witness a huge earthquake that is off the scales, or it's very, very bad, or maybe a number of them, or maybe some volcanoes blow their top, then folks, this is definitely for sure a sign. But already, even without the earthquakes happening, we need to take notice of this. This is beyond conspiracy theories. This is not being done by HARP. This is not being done by the Space Force of America or China or Russia. This is the hand of God Almighty. This is His production, ladies and gentlemen. This is His power on display. And He's not finished yet. Hurricane Hillary crossing Mexico and going into the Pacific and then going north and dying in the state of Idaho is not normal, folks. Hurricanes do not die in Idaho, but that's what just happens. So these events that are taking place are being orchestrated by God, ladies and gentlemen, not by directed energy weapons. Folks, look at these images. And I'm not going to even try. I'm not even going to attempt to remove a sign that is before all of our eyes and attribute it to mankind. I'm not going to do that, folks, because the angels control the wind. And speaking of wind, let's look at the Hawaii forecast the day before the fires. That was Hurricane Dora, which began in, of all things, Africa, and it crossed the Atlantic, and it went across Mexico, I believe, or South America, or somewhere in Middle America it crossed, and then it went into the Pacific, it crossed the international time zone, and then it went under Hawaii. And as it was going to go under Hawaii, the weathermen saw that the bands of moisture were not going to reach Hawaii, but only wind was going to reach Hawaii. Meanwhile, at the same time, there was a pressure system that was going to come in from the north, and together they were going to form a bottleneck, which meant that wind was going to be forced over the top of Dora and under the high pressure system. And when it did that, we had a chimney effect where wind was going to blowtorch over Hawaii. And because the forecasters saw this, the meteorologists saw this condition that was coming, so they issued a red flag warning. A red flag warning means that the conditions are perfect. There's going to be three things: wind, very high winds. It's going to have low humidity, and all the brush is dry, which means it's great fuel for fires. So they told everyone the day before that the conditions were ripe for this, and wind was going to be playing a huge role. Let me go ahead and show you. Here you go, folks.
Or down trees, power outages, a possibility with this high pressure fan continuing to build in. There's a big pressure difference from that high pressure fan and also Dora low pressure system that you can see to the south of us. With that hurricane, it's still a major category 4, and you see the winds at the center 130. Now it's going to make its closest approach to the island, and then that area of high pressure, they're going to both work together to funnel in very strong winds across the entire island chain, and that's going to last within the next 36 hours. So a windy batch coming our way. In fact, we have a red flag warning. High wind warnings are up for all of the islands. Dry brush, also low relative humidity and very gusty conditions. Gusts up to even 50 miles per hour coming our way tomorrow.
Okay, that was the weather prediction. It was wind, ladies and gentlemen. Wind. So when we went to the next day, that's exactly what people were noticing. Wind was knocking down trees. Wind was knocking down telephone poles and electrical poles. It was happening all over the island. On the day of the fires, there were 4 fires. On August 8th, that day, there were 4 fires, folks. Hey, alliteration. There were 4. There was a grass fire above Lahaina to the northeast, and the firemen were there early in the morning, 7 or 8 in the morning, and they battled it for a few hours, and they thought that they got it under control, but then it flared back up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And when that happened, it started to go down the hill. It didn't go slow, folks. That fire, when it erupted again, was traveling at 1 mile a minute. Now, folks, think about that. 1 mile a minute. That's 60 miles an hour. That's how fast the wind was moving.
I've never seen any wind that strong in my life, ever.
access to the roof, the way that houses catch on fire in situations like this is embers land on the roof. So that nobody has access to the roof.
You guys are out.
That's smart. Nobody has access to the roof, huh?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Oh no. I don't know, dude. What do you think about going to the ocean?
What I would do is just put the electric sheet in your car.
Okay.
Just be prepared.
Okay. And then what? I gotta get in my car if I see flames? When do I leave?
If you see flames, get in your car. Unless you're planning on staying and defending your space.
Flying everywhere, fire embers. Gets night and day. In 10 seconds, it's dark, like the night. Look at the smoke. I don't know if you can see it, but it's really bad close by. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's very smoke. Well, we cannot use the car.
No, but we could go in the ocean. Oh, there's a police car coming. See, now the guy's telling him, see, you're in the way. There's an ambulance coming. I think it's just barely gonna miss our house. I hope. I'm in park, right? Yeah.
And when you have wind doing that, it's going to do some weird things. I want to remind everybody, maybe you forgot, and maybe you got caught up in the excitement of the conspiracy theory, because I saw a number of you comment and say that fire does not behave that way. Fire doesn't burn a car and then leave a tree untouched. It just doesn't do that. And I also heard some people say fire doesn't burn cars and make the aluminum melt, pools of aluminum. It also doesn't melt glass. And when you look at the burned out cars, that's what we see. We see burnt out shells of metal with everything gone, and the wheels are burned up. So part of the conspiracy is relying on the fact of hearsay. Hearsay, ladies and gentlemen, assumption, and ignoring regular common sense, ignoring science, and ignoring what you guys should know better. Because let's look at this, folks. You see this guy right here? He has a setup as a blacksmith, and he has the bellow, the giant bellow. This is what the blacksmith's setup was like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. The blacksmith was a guy that knew how to bend metal, and he knew how to get it hot enough to bend it. How did he do it? With the bellow. The bellow was a diaphragm or a pump that he would let him blow air on the flames, and by giving the flames air, he was giving the flames oxygen. And when oxygen is fed into a flame, the flame will burn hotter. That's basic 101 metalworking, ladies and gentlemen. Those of you that mess with knives, you should know this. If you're following this conspiracy and you made this statement, did you forget? I don't understand how there can be millions and millions of people who would say this or hear it and then not question it and say, yeah, cars aren't supposed to do that. Well, if the wind is blowing 60 to 80 miles an hour, which is what it was doing, you see these images, folks? Look how fast the wind's blowing. Those are oxygen machines. The island was acting like a giant bellow, And Lahaina, unfortunately, was the black box where all the melting takes place in the blacksmith's shop. The bellow blew the fire down and constantly fed it oxygen, which then increased the temperature. Now, when a blacksmith does this to metal, how high does the temperature get? Those of you that mess with knives, you know it gets over 2,000 degrees. In fact, up to 2,500 degrees or even hotter if you can really push it. But 2,000 degrees to 2,500 degrees is well enough to melt glass and to melt aluminum, because aluminum, those wheels on the cars made out of aluminum, they melt at approximately 1,200 degrees around. I might be a little bit off, but it's not 2,500. It doesn't require 2,500 degrees of heat to melt those aluminum wheels. Also, when you see some of the cars that the whole front end has melted off, that's because they're made out of plastic or very thin sheet metal, and it just vaporizes. And then a lot of motors are made out of aluminum as well, so they just puddled. They just went away. This is why we see a lot of weird anomalies in the aftermath. Look at these images, folks. There are steel beams that have just melted upon themselves. They went limp and just collapsed on themselves. How could that be? It's because the fire was fueled by the wind. And this is very simple. It's easy to understand. It doesn't take a genius, because the people in the cowboy days and in the Renaissance days understood this. They knew fire. They knew how to melt things. So if the conspiracy theory of the energy weapons is dependent on that, because people are using that as one of the arguments. Well, nothing else could have done this. Actually, I just explained. Yeah, it could, because we watched it happen. And this is not the first time it's happened. We see this over and over when we have wildfires. I have lived in the Northwest and in Colorado over the last 30 years. I've lived in the mountains. Over the last 30 years, for the majority of the time, I have lived next to the forest. And every year we have fire season. Every year the hot shots show up, the planes that pick up water, the helicopters that pick up water. You can watch sometimes from your house. We can see flames from the house, and they're fighting it. And if there's wind, that's the worst thing for a forest fire, because it makes it spread and it changes everything. So some of these fires that we have been watching, the one that happened at Medical Lake, Washington, next to Spokane, we were under a red flag warning that day. The wind was blowing very high, and that's why it was quick moving. Unfortunately, there are people who say, no, it was done by a directed energy weapon also. Folks, I live here. This is my backyard. So for the keyboard commandos who are trying to spread the narrative of directed energy weapons at Medical Lake, first of all, Medical Lake is not the sort of community where you build a smart city. The houses that burned were built around the lake, and so the wind pushed it around the lake. But at the same time, there were some people who did not leave, and they had their hose, and they were spraying as the embers got on the grass next to their house. They sprayed on them. They were going down to the lake and getting buckets of water and throwing it on the fires, and they were fighting the flames, and they were able to preserve their house. And during fires like this, it's the embers that do the damage. It's the embers that are moving very quickly that spread the fire. Now, those of you who are holding on to this narrative, if you would do some research and set aside the echoes that you're hearing, because the echoes are based on bad science, and they're based on obvious lack of research, because we can see where the fire originated from. We can look at the map and see the wind was blowing to the southeast. That means you go opposite that upwind and you can see where it originated, and there were two areas it originated, and we have the video of the power lines getting knocked over it at 6:37 in the morning when the person filmed it. Look at this video. He's filming it. It was not an energy weapon that blasted it. Now, as I stated a moment ago, when the fire went out of control and it erupted at around 2 in the afternoon and it started going southeast or southwest toward Lahaina, it moved fast. It was moving at 1 mile a minute, so it got to the town very, very quick. Now, if some of you want to hold on to the energy weapon theory, then what do we do with the fire moving very quickly toward Lahaina? How does the energy weapon do that when the wind is pushing it? How is the energy weapon involved when the wind is pushing the grass fire? Because that's what it was at first. When the wind is pushing it, and we see that it's going to then get to the edge of the city, and then it started grabbing onto whatever it could, any thing that was flammable, and it found garbage cans and piles of wood, brush, leaves, grass, dried out trees, or old buildings that were made out of wood. It grabbed whatever it could and it attached to it. And because the fire was supercharged by 60 to 80 mile an hour winds, they erupted also. And as they exploded into flames, they were being fed by the bellow from above. So when the initial buildings erupted in flames, folks, watch this. If we were up in the air, and in fact, we have seen this. There are videos of the flames moving along the ground. You can see them traveling. In fact, let me just put this up. Look at this. This was recorded at night. Look how fast the flames are burning, how they're moving. Those flames are going to reach buildings and cars, flammable things. They're going to burn up what is ever in their path. Now, as these flames are moving with the wind, why does this event need laser beams from the sky to also help it? Because if laser beams from the sky were helping it, those laser beams would be shooting through the smoke, the black smoke, and people would have seen the laser beams hitting this building and this car, the people trying to escape. The way that this narrative is going, they're saying that the buildings were set fire by the laser beams and then the cars melted weird because they're next to a palm tree, and so it was laser beams. So if we are to understand this logic, now folks, please stay with me for a second while I explain this. While the fire is moving along the ground and then it met buildings, the grass fire met the edge of town and they erupted, and then the wind, as those buildings burn, there's going to be embers. There's going to be pieces of the building that fall off that are on fire, and they tumble along the ground, and then whatever is on the ground that's flammable will then erupt in flames. So while this phenomenon is taking place, fire's moving along the ground, catching other things on fire, what sense does it make for a laser beam? What is it, an airplane? Is it a satellite? What is it? I've heard some people show pictures of the energy-directed military plane. Some of you guys are sending me pictures as if I'm claiming they don't exist. I never said they don't exist. Of course they exist. Lasers exist. As the fire is moving on the ground, what sense would it make for laser beams to be is that how it was? So the wind is pushing it a mile a minute, but the laser beams are also hitting targets right in front of the moving wall of fire? Really? And if that was true, there's another phenomenon happening. As the fire is moving along the ground, being pushed by wind behind it, that means in front of the fire is very thick black smoke is in front of the fire. So then it's hindering what people can see, which means it would also hinder what the satellite could see. How's the satellite going to see through all that black smoke and pinpoint the buildings to melt when there's an entire cloud of dark smoke over the town? You see, folks, the theory doesn't take this into consideration. And when these elements are left out, then yeah, it's easy to believe it, but these are basic elements that a fifth grader can understand. But why are grown-ups who call themselves Christians forgetting all this? So then we're also led to believe that the cars were then also burned by laser beams. Never mind that they're moving, and never mind that there's people inside of them, and never mind that the people inside are not saying, wow, lightning just hit my car, or lightning just hit that car in front of me. Everyone was filming, by the way, that day. Everyone had their phones out. It was amazing, folks. Even in the flames, people are filming because everyone's a content creator now. They want to have that story, that scoop, that famous image. And when the people ended up in the ocean to be safe, they even filmed it then. Why is that? Because we live in a society now that films everything. They video everything. And the people in the cars did not talk about lightning or laser beams or bright flashes hitting the cars on Front Street. They didn't mention it, folks. There is no witness testimony of that. But what we do have testimony of is what we see in the aftermath. Fire moved very quickly. And by the way, for those of you that are saying, well, how come it didn't burn the trees? Why not? Here's why, folks. The fire was going 60 to 80 miles an hour. So the objects in their path that could hold on to an ember, that an ember could embed itself into, would then burn. If there was a piece of wood on fire and it's moving along the ground and it hits a tree and it embeds into the tree, the blowtorch of the wind will get the tree to burn. But if it hits the tree and bounces off the tree and then sparks come off, embers come off, but all of those embers and sparks continue moving past the tree, then the tree is not going to catch on fire. And we have testimony of people saying that the trees were bent over laterally to the ground. We've seen that, folks. In hurricanes, the palm trees will bend over because the wind is pushing them. And we have video of the embers blowing past palm trees, but they are embedding themselves in some of the lower things. Look at these images. It's very simple. The embers moved along the ground. It was perfect for this catastrophe, this disaster.
Yeah, I cut a hole right through here.
So you...
And see, that's where my clothes I sat down, where those hangers are right there, that's where they went poof! And I was running about right there, and I just dived down like this. I had a shirt on, you know, I dived down and just did a belly flip thing like this, because I know the air, you got to get down, you know what I mean?
So you were you just dove into the water there?
Yeah, right, lay down, because you stand up, they hit you, you're dead. You go burst in the flame, you know what I mean? Like, I'm hoping, oh.
Was it just about this much water when you were in it?
Yeah.
And so that was enough. Do you think if that wasn't there, would you have survived without the water?
Nope, I don't think so. Maybe not.
So just enough of a trickle, it was enough to save you?
Yeah, right there, that was caught over. I got wet, and you know what I mean? And I just was, and I was lucky right then that it was, the wind was, because when the wind would blow this stuff and blow the fire down, it would be balls. It looked like I'd never seen nothing in my life.
Like fire hail?
Yeah, fire hail. Coming at you, it's 70, 50 mile an hour wind, and you're like, whoa, you know, and when I seen that.
Now, I have a lot more to share about this. I understand that there's some of the bullet points that the water was turned off the day before, and some of you have messaged me privately and said that to me when I already know that that's not true. I know it's not true, folks. The firemen on Maui have talked about it. They were fighting several fires all over the island. There was a huge one on the other side of the island. So the water was not turned off. The problem with the catastrophe was that they ran out of pressure. And that is because a lot of the houses were on fire and the pipes in houses were on fire. So leaks sprung up, and water in burning houses is going to leak water. The pipes are made out of PVC. If the water's not turned off, you know, the main valve at the end of the driveway at the house, then the water's going to keep leaking at that house. Imagine all of the restaurants, all of the buildings, the hardware stores who have faucets all burned, and so the PVC pipes melted and all that water was just leaking. The pressure dropped for that reason. In fact, because of that, because of the pipes melting all over town, there's a lot of leaching that takes place from the chemicals that are in PVC. One of them is benzene. And so in the aftermath of this, they're telling people don't drink the water because it leached from the PVC pipes. And we observe that same phenomenon in wildfires all over the country. There is a professor at a university who has been studying this, and he says this is a common aftermath of fires, that because of the melted PVC, it leaches into the water system. So this is not a conspiracy, folks. It's not nefarious. This happens during fire. It's amazing, though, that the folks out there who hear this, they said, see, they turned off the water so that the people could die. Which, now let's talk about that. In order for this conspiracy theory to work, we have to have people complicit in it. We have to have people who signed off on it, who were bought, who were bribed, and who understand the end game, the end result, that they're going to burn down Lahaina so that the billionaires can build a smart city. So in order for this theory to actually be true, that means that some of the locals of Lahaina, the town of 13,000, made up of a lot of native Hawaiians, the locals, folks, the natives, are in the police department. The natives are firemen. The natives work for the light company. A native was one of the managers of the emergencies. The guy who everyone's saying turned off the siren on purpose so people could die. He's a native. How many generations has he been there? More than most mainlanders in America, I'm sure, because they're First Nation people. And First Nation people have an animosity to the white man. First Nation people have an animosity to the rich man and the opportunists and the businessmen who come and turn their home into a playground, into an amusement park, who bring other projects into Hawaii. And this is a common thing that they're fighting over right now. This has been ongoing for years. There's water wars going on because their water is sourced from springs, natural springs. It's where a lot of their water comes from, and it's limited. So when you have the rich corporations coming in building destination resorts, the natives don't like it because it uses up their water. There has been water that's been diverted. It used to go to the sugar plantations. Instead of letting it divert to the natives, to Lahaina and some of the other towns, it was diverted to some of the resorts. So there's ongoing lawsuits and fights over the water. And the natives hate it. The natives do not like the invaders.
What's up, guys? I just wanted to say, please stop spreading misinformation and rumors and conspiracy theories and that kind of stuff about the fires in Maui. It's already a complicated situation. It's already difficult. We don't need a bunch of conspiracy theories going on to just make people distrustful and make things worse. There is no psyop to take out the people by the government. There's not a space laser trying for, you know, burn stuff and stuff like that. You know, not even really about global warming either. What it is, which they don't want to talk about, is colonialism. Lahaina had its water rights ripped off and stolen by settlers to water their part of the island. So Lahaina doesn't have enough water to be sustainable anymore, so it's susceptible to burns. So when the electrical fire happened, a tragedy happened. It's just that simple. Conspiracies, they don't help, guys, they just hurt. So please.
So no disrespect, but there is not a mass amount of missing children. That is just a conspiracy theory, a way for people to push the agenda of this big underground child ring. And I'm not saying that stuff doesn't exist, but that's not what happened here. It's further separating the community to push such misinformation, instead of us being able to harness our efforts and focus our efforts on really making a change and holding the government accountable for the mismanaged waterways and the land mismanagement. So I stopped by a few different places delivering today, but in particular, we had ordered that underwear for my kids, my friends' kids, who are also like my kids, and they had lost everything in the fire. And I was talking to the teen's son about it, and he just started like unloading everything that had happened that day. Starting with school getting canceled and then moving into his escaping and trying to help other people get out, which is the general consensus of what happened. You see the fire and then you try to help as many people as you can. He was talking about how he had left behind jerseys and stuff that meant so much to him. And I asked him, you know, do you need a skateboard or anything? And we put anything up on Amazon for you? And he said, no, he's just glad to be alive. So with that being said, he was talking about possibly being interviewed by the news in the future and how he would like to, because he's so tired of seeing all of the conspiracy theories and how there was no laser and how there is not a bunch of missing children. All of his friends are accounted for, and he went to school down there. I've talked to teachers who know that their entire class is okay. All of their students. We've got students starting where I work. We've got kids that are already there from Lahaina Luna. We've got kids from Lahaina all over the different schools on the island and other islands, and also doing distance learning. There is not 2,000 lost or missing children. So then my question to social media is, why rub salt in an already grieving parent's wound by saying that it's this big conspiracy, when even, you know, my kid, I don't know, do you call him nephew? What do you call him? He's my kid, but not my blood kid. When you have him saying that these conspiracies need to stop, you need to understand that it's not only furthering to divide our community, it's distracting people from actually putting efforts into the relief efforts. That's what's actually needed here. And it just hurts the victims even more. There's not a conspiracy here.
Now, folks, think about this. Those natives are, in other words, a clan. They are family members. They are related to each other. They are first and second and third cousins, and they stay Hawaiian, they stay native, and they don't appreciate the invaders. They don't. So now let's talk about that situation with the conspiracy theory. In order for the conspiracy theory to work, that means that the police officers who are native wanted to kill their cousins and their brothers and their sisters and their in-laws and their friends and their grandparents. It means in order for this theory to be true, it means that they wanted to kill their kin and become a part of the white man's world. Really? Folks, really? The reason that the police had a road blocked off is because trees were blocking the road, and trees had knocked over power lines, and the power lines were blocking the road with trees. So if people started driving down these roads, they would have found themselves at a dead end or blocked, and then it would have become a convoy of cars that were stuck. And then what would the fires have done then? What? So the cops were trying to prevent that. Now, was it the best judgment? I don't know. People wanted to escape, and then some of the locals were saying that they went around the roadblock anyway, and they were able to go around the trees and the things that were falling, and they made their way to safety. So it worked for them. When there's a disaster, this is the other thing that I guess folks forgot. Ladies and gentlemen, we are accustomed to tornadoes and hurricanes here on the mainland. We understand that. We understand earthquakes. We understand catastrophes here. And when we've had hurricanes here, and then the rescue operation and the mop-up begins, there is always chaos. There is always a lot of infighting. There's always people who disagree. There's mismanagement. There are bad decisions. There are people who are in certain roles that maybe don't do as good as a job as someone else would have. But the reason for all of this is because it's made up of people, and we're not perfect. People are not perfect. So there are decisions that are made that are not perfect. So when the cops said the road is blocked, and then people shared they blocked the roads to keep people on Front Street to die, well, what they're leaving out is that there was a down power line. There are other people who walked up to the policeman and said, "What's going on?" And the cop said, "I'm just following orders." And from above, it was because the power company was working on moving the mess. Now, should the power company have had their trucks blocking the road at that time? Well, in most weather events, their job is to restore power. So that's all they were thinking about. They weren't thinking that this was about to be the worst catastrophe in American history or in a long time. They were just doing their job. Now, as far as the manager who didn't sound the alarm, he said why he didn't do it. He said because the people are trained to go uphill when they hear that because it's a tsunami alarm. And then, of course, we had the news people saying, well, on their website it says that the alarm is for fires and floods and tsunamis and pretty much any emergency earthquakes. And yeah, that's true that it says that, folks, but at the surface level, when you live on the coast and you hear the siren go off, you're thinking tsunami. And I used to live on the coast. I have lived on the Oregon coast before, and the signs are everywhere. It says when you hear the alarm go off, seek higher ground. That's what it says. So when the emergency manager said that people would have done that, and then you have the armchair quarterback saying, no, they wouldn't have. People aren't that dumb. People wouldn't have done that. But then again, ladies and gentlemen, really? To say that people aren't that dumb? Well, maybe that's not the right description. Perhaps people are disoriented, or people are confused, or people are scared, or people are panicking. And when you get people in that situation, when we're in those situations, we don't have everything together. We're not thinking with everything. We're just thinking flight. We're not thinking fight. We're thinking flight. So where do we go? Some people would have gone uphill. They would have. So to second guess that, I don't think there's a perfect answer. But they did send the alerts to everybody's phone. So everyone had their phone and was told that there was a fire and to seek safety. They also put it on the TV. Of course, by then, most people probably weren't watching TV, but it was on TV and it was on the news, it was on the radio, and it was on the phones that there was a fire. And I'm not going to take that away and second guess that. Now, the sad thing about this, folks, the sad thing about this is that a lot of people have now doxed that gentleman, this guy right here, and they're making threats to him. They're saying he's a murderer. They're making hate posts about him. They're saying that he needs to die. So this poor guy who's a native, who's related to a lot of people, and who would not ever think to kill his own countrymen. He would not think that, ladies and gentlemen. How do you know, Nathan? Because I know. It's common sense, folks. Come on. This poor guy quit the job the next day, and for all we know, he is suicidal. He's depressed. He has all this pressure. People are saying things to him. They're accusing him. They're tarring and feathering him. And for those of you that have posted, I want to say this, folks. You know, the Bible does have instructions on how we're supposed to behave in situations. The Bible tells us in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 1, it says, therefore, rid yourselves of all malice and all deceit and hypocrisy and envy and all slander. Rid yourself of those things. And like newborn babies, long for the pure milk of the word, so by it you may grow. So that you may grow. So what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to feed on the word of God. And the word of God talks about slander and bearing false witness and saying things about others that aren't true. The 7 deadly sins in the book of Proverbs chapter 6 mention twice. It mentions a lying tongue is one of the things God hates, and bearing false witness. Those two things God hates, ladies and gentlemen. He hates it. So if some of you were spreading this narrative and you didn't bother to check the facts and you didn't bother to see if it was true, then you were spreading slander. Because to talk about these police officers or this emergency guy or these other people who are natives and they love their home, there is no way they would ever give it up. But people on the mainland are saying horrible things about them. People on the mainland, for clickbait, are making videos and sharing YouTube videos and TikTok videos and all sorts of videos that they can monetize. They're saying horrible things about the people that were in charge of the management of this catastrophe. And of course, even right now, it's a mess. I know it's a mess. I know that there are people that aren't happy and things are taking longer than they should, but every one of the complaints that are going on can be explained. They can be explained, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, either we are in the end times and we know it and we understand it, or we're not. Now, I want to finish with this. I want to show you guys something. There was a gentleman, actually there was a number of them, who ended up in the water. They filmed themselves in the water, and by now you've seen the people in the water trying to stay safe. Well, one of the people who was in the water filmed and documented everything. He documented the journey from when he was in a car before it even got bad, and then the conversation happening in the car with his, I believe his family members, his brother. He wasn't with his father and his mother, but he was just with his brother and some friends, and they were in a car, and they filmed what was going on. And the thing that he says that he endured, that he had to put up with, really got my attention. And in fact, it's a little bit spooky. So before I show you that video clip, I want to read something to you. In Revelation 8, now we were talking about the angel throwing fire down. In Revelation 8, verse 7, it talks about the first trumpet. The first trumpet, folks. It says, the first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood. And they were thrown to the earth, and a third of the trees were burned, and all green grass was burned up. A third of the trees were burned. Now, folks, I want to offer something to you for your consideration that I am wondering about, and it is this. Is it possible that when some of these trumpet events occur, that instead of them happening all at the same time, in other words, the entire earth is on fire at the same time, and everyone can see it and see the smoke at the same time, is it possible that this prophecy can be fulfilled, but it will fulfill itself in increments? So in other words, in order to burn up all of South America, it would be parts of Brazil first and Argentina, but not all of it. And then maybe a few weeks later or a few months later, more will burn to finish it. Same thing with America, same thing with Africa. Is it possible that it's going to move around and not be all at once? Is it? I would say yes. And the reason I say that is because there's something that Jesus said over and over when he was warning us to be ready. And Allison has reminded me of this many times. And it is this. Jesus says over and over, I'm coming at a time when you don't expect it. Now, in the natural, it would appear that if we see all these events taking place, the trumpets are blown and all these things are taking place, you got fire and hail and the water getting poisoned and all of those things. It would appear that as they happen one by one, it's going to be easy to know that Jesus is about to come back, so people would be ready because people would be expecting it. But that's not what Jesus said. He said, I'm coming when you don't expect it. So if that's the case, is he going to send a curveball and a lot of those trumpet events are going to happen locally or remotely here and there in increments? Is it possible? So with that being said, what we just read is fire will be thrown down mixed with hail. Okay, now watch this, folks. This video I'm going to show you is from the gentleman who filmed, him and his brother, and he talks about the fire. He talks about the embers. He talks about how they would hit you in the face, and they were going very fast. And of course, that's to be expected because they were traveling. Now think about it, folks. If the fire is moving 1 mile a minute, that's 60 miles an hour. That means all of the debris field of embers is also traveling at 60 miles an hour, which equates to a baseball player or a pitcher in a baseball game hurling embers at 60 miles an hour at buildings, at cars, at trees, and at people. And if they're able to embed themselves, then this is what it's like. Listen to this, folks.
Like that, and that's it.
So you have at least some water with you?
Yep, I had water. I brought all our water. It was in my backpack.
What are those the conditions like, though? Because, I mean, you're talking about hurricane force winds. The waves must have been crashing into you as well, but you're just in the moment of watching what's unfolding in front of you?
Thankfully, immediately after we got in, the water was okay. The wind, though, was, I mean, everyone saw it. It spread in minutes down to Front Street. The wind was going crazy. I mean, I don't know how fast, but hurricane force winds. I mean, it was bad. And yeah, like you said, his like fitted hat blew straight off his head, and like, you know, it was, you know, palm trees bending over, wind, like I said, roof panels coming off. It was that windy. And then we were just trying to like cover our eyes because of the smoke and
also I assume like the sparks, right?
Yeah.
I heard somebody describe it like fire hail.
Yeah. Yeah, I would absolutely, I could see that, especially when we were coming down Lahaina Luna Road. It was just like shooting. I heard someone describe it as like someone throwing like baseballs of fire. It was exactly like that.
The front street's gonna look so different. That's gonna be crazy.
And some pieces were really big, like embers like that big. Big chunks of whatever. So we were lucky enough to be in the water, so even like we made sure our hair was wet was one thing, because I saw someone their hair caught an ember and started like little spark, you know, could have become bad, and their friend like wet their hair. So I was like, wait, we got to get our hair wet. And you know, of course we're in the water, so most of our limbs, I mean, I was how far above the water were you, do you think? How much of the
right here?
That's about where I was, because I was crouching down, because my mom and him are shorter than me, so I was about here too. So we knew, like, you know, if we were like this, our hands were covered, our faces were okay from the embers.
You're gonna be okay, Milo. Milo, your mask is dirty. It's better.
Can I just wash it?
Yeah, just wash it.
It's kind of like when you open an oven and you're kind of like, imagine if you're like grabbing, you know, cookies out of the oven and that is blowing on you. That's what it felt like. That.
When I heard him say that, I saw this last night, and I showed it to Allison, and then we both looked at each other, and then we opened Revelation, and we read what I just read you. Fire and hail mixed with blood. And the blood part, of course, is from the death, because people die. He described a baseball of fire, like hail. Folks, that's interesting. And I'm not saying that this is a first trumpet event. I'm not saying that. But it might be possible that the opening credits are beginning to appear. Because look at the picture on your screen. There's fire everywhere. So where are we in the book of Revelation? If we look at the beginning portion of chapter 8, when the angel takes the incense and he throws it down, is that what it is? Or are we actually at the first trumpet? Where are we, folks? I'm not sure, and I'm not going to say that I'm sure. I'm just saying that I'm visiting it, and it's on the table. But the thing that needs to be communicated with all of you guys is that these conspiracy theories, while they sound good, they require an exercise of basically turning off logic, turning off science, turning off physics, turning off common sense, and also they require the use of slander and false witness and deception and lying, because this theory that is being shared is joined at the hip with those fake images, or the misappropriated images, if I may say it that way. That's Elon Musk rocket taking off. The other one, there's another photograph, this one right here, that's a refinery that was burning in Ohio a few years ago, and when the person took the picture, it had a light pillar, which is lens flare, basically. Light pillars are normal. The camera picks them up. They're not unique, but we see that with cameras, and we also see those types of things when we take a picture of something glowing on the other side of a window. Like if you take a picture of a car on fire, the reflections is going to hit the glass, so there's going to be artifacts on the window. And then when the people see it, they say, what is that? Look. Now, as far as the Oprah stuff, how come Oprah's house didn't burn up and the billionaires? Well, the people asking that question, and if you've asked that question, let me ask this. Did you bother to find out where Oprah lives? Did you find out her address? Did you look at it on Google Maps? And did you confirm if it was in the burn area of Lahaina? In other words, does Oprah have a mansion in the burn area of Lahaina? Yes or no? Let me go ahead and answer that, folks. No, she doesn't. She lives 24 miles away on the other side of the island. Far away. And her house is not painted blue, which is another conspiracy because the dew laser can't burn blue. And, you know, folks, it's just silly. Some of the things that didn't burn for a reason. There was an umbrella that didn't burn and it's painted blue, so people are assuming, well, I guess laser doesn't burn blue. Well, how do we know that it has not been treated with fire retardant? And how do we know that the embers that were going past it didn't have a chance to embed themselves in it? Because it was flapping in the wind that was going 80 miles an hour. Fire does some weird things. When some people say fire doesn't do that, that just shows they have not read about fire or witnessed fire. Folks, I've been through the forest after a fire. I've driven through the leftovers. I've driven through it. I've seen trees that burned and trees that didn't burn. Some of you are repeating the talking points that come from the original conspiracy. And those talking points, one by one, they can be slaughtered. They can be demolished. But it takes time. It takes research. and it takes thinking outside the box. The end game of this is civil war. The end game of this is one mad citizen saying, you know what, you're not going to do that to me. I'm going to do something about it. And what they want to see is citizens setting fire to government buildings or doxing government workers and then attacking them at their private home, which is why I had to speak up about this gentleman, the emergency gentleman who didn't turn on the sirens. If he ends up getting hurt because of false witness and this slander, you know what, folks? God's going to hold everyone who spread that guilty for the blood of that guy. Is that really what we want? No. That's what Satan wants. And here's the other thing, folks. We're watching the end of days. And Satan knows his time is short. So he's doing everything he can to convince the world that whatever changes we see happening on the earth, they're not the end times. They are not from Revelation, but rather it's climate change. It's global warming. That's why we're having all these fires. That's what Satan's doing. And if that doesn't work, then let's throw in conspiracy. The reason we're having all these fires is because the space lasers are burning up the citizens. And right now it was Lahaina. And I've heard recently some others are posting that the campfire from Paradise, California in 2018 that burned almost 19,000 buildings and it killed a lot of people and it had a lot of destruction. People are now saying that that was started by laser beams. But if that is true, it's been 5 years, folks. Where's the smart city in Paradise? Where is it? Where's the land grab? Where is it? We don't see that. And in a few months, we're going to see the same thing in Lahaina. They're going to start rebuilding. They're going to start recovering. The dust is going to settle. And a few months are going to go by. And then we're going to look back. And the people who spread this conspiracy will be in another conspiracy by then. They will be following something else. And then they will look back and say, oh, I guess it wasn't Lahaina. Or maybe it's going to come later. Or it will be dismissed. So the malice, the hypocrisy, the slander, the deception that everyone took part in will be forgotten and they'll move on. Meanwhile, the people in Lahaina, they're going to be still recovering. They still have relatives who didn't make it. They will still have relatives that were never found. And they will still be living in great grief. So the end result out of all of this, folks, is Satan wants to distract from the signs of the times and attribute them to man. That's what the devil's doing, folks. He's going to do it with aliens for the signs in the heavens. When Jesus starts giving us the signs in the heavens, Satan wants people believing it's aliens. So he's getting it all going right now to get people believing that. And now the angel's going to be throwing fire down, according to Revelation 8. And Satan knows it. So what do you think he's going to do, folks? He's going to do what we're watching right now. He's going to come up with a different narrative to get your eyes off what's going on, to get you focused on a conspiracy that is not true. So, ladies and gentlemen, in summary, it was all a lie. It was not true. We're watching the end times. We're watching Bible prophecy take place. A lot of his children are passing false information. And it's not that difficult, folks. When you see images that you're not sure about, if it's on your phone, you can save the image to your device, to your phone, and then go to your gallery where it's stored. Hold your finger over it, and depending on what kind of phone you have, if it's Google, you can search that image with Google Lens. You can do that, and it'll bring up where that image comes from. Or you can download the image and then upload it to Google Images, which is on the desktop, and let Google do a search on the image, and it'll bring up if it's true or not. I did that with this image, the Elon Musk image, and it brought it right up. It said, this is a rocket taking off. And it took me 15 seconds. When I went to Facebook and I said, hey, I mentioned to some of my Facebook family members who had that image on their wall, they posted it, and I shared with them, you're using an image that is false. It's fake. It's being used wrongly. Some of you said, thank you, Nathan. I don't want to do that. So you looked into it. But some of you argued against me and said, so? They're still doing it. They're still doing lasers. They're still blasting Hawaii with lasers. So whether the image is true or not, it doesn't matter. And you see, folks, if some of you answered that, I don't understand that, because on your wall, you have all verses about God and you talk about the second coming and Jesus, and you hate the woke people and you hate Bud Light. And there's a lot of talking points from Fox News on your walls. To have all that stuff and say that you're a Christian, but then tell me privately, so even if it's wrong, they're still doing it, really says a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, it really says a lot. And 1 Peter chapter 2 tells us that we're not supposed to have it if we are his children. We can't do that. And Proverbs 6, the things that the Lord hates, we can't do that. I told him it's bearing false witness, and Proverbs 6 condemns it. Some folks gave me the rebuttal, so it's still happening. Ladies and gentlemen, we can do better than this, folks. So I'm going to end this program right now. And I know it's long. I know there's a lot here. But I'm doing this for the people of God, for the brethren. Please make note of how many other watchmen are telling you the truth. How many other watchmen are telling you what I just said? Because what I'm doing right now comes with a price. I am getting attacked. People are sending curses to me. I'm getting hate mail. People are unsubscribing. And even there are some of you who have been with me for a long time are saying, you know, in the past, Nathan was pretty on top of things, but now it's making me wonder if he's compromised or has he been bought? Is he blinded now? And why is he defending the New World Order? No, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not defending the New World Order. I'm defending justice. I'm defending righteous justice. Righteousness, folks. Not tribunals. Not accusations, not tribunals who ignore the word of God and then just spit out whatever they have. And folks, make note of who's doing this. The watchmen who are telling you all this garbage, they call themselves Christians, but they're still slandering some of the natives on Hawaii. And these are real people. These are real people. But apparently the 7 deadly sins don't seem to matter. So just make note of that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your friend, and I'm not going to lie to you because I fear God more than popularity, and I fear God more than people, and more than the backlash of this. Because there's a lot of it, I'm getting it. That's fine, folks, because I'm a servant of God, and I have to do this. And I'm not going to deviate. The word is the word. I don't want to stand before God and be embarrassed, and neither should you. All right, ladies and gentlemen? If you appreciate what I'm doing here, if you appreciate the sacrifice that I'm doing, because that's what it is. If you only knew the hate that's coming in, folks. If you only knew. But if you don't believe me, go to Facebook. I have a Facebook link below in the description. And I am hoping that this will energize some of you and it will encourage some of you that are also noticing the same things. Because I know that there's a segment of you that don't believe it either. And the Holy Spirit has also shown you. But folks, right now we have to defend boldly the truth. That's our job. And that's what I do. And if you can see that there's value in this, I really need your support. Allison has been sick for the last week and a half. She had a UTI, and you ladies know what that is. And the doctors gave her the wrong medicine for the first 12 days. She was on the wrong medicine that did not fight it. And then finally they figured it out from a culture sample. So then they talked to her on the phone and they said, you need a different prescription. So then we went back and they put her on the good stuff, but she missed a week of work and that set us behind. And we're very behind for that, folks. I've been playing nursemaid for her and taking care of her. At the same time, I'm trying to work this. She's feeling better now. She went back to work. But folks, see the value in honesty. See the value in the truth. We need to defend the truth, and that's what I'm doing, ladies and gentlemen. Hold our hands as we do it so that we can bring more of this to you. Our address is, there it is on the screen, Watchman's Cry, P.O. Box 157, Priest River, Idaho 83856. Or you can go to our website, watchmanscry.com. And by the way, some of you have told me that you're getting notified that my website is unsafe, but my website is safe. I've always been here. There's nothing nefarious about my website. Or you can go to the link in the description here, and there's a link to PayPal and to Venmo. Help us make it count, folks. We're behind, but I don't want to not be able to do this and share with you these very important things. All right, ladies and gentlemen? So share this message, share it with your loved ones, and also do your own research. Do your own research, folks. So with that, I'm going to end this program. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.